I'm from Colorado. We're used to, we have a lot of sun out there. I also, before I was in the Senate 10 years ago or so, I was the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools. And I know well that there's a generation of Americans that have never seen a functioning democracy in this country. There's a generation of Americans that have never seen a country that hasn't been at war. And when middle school kids and high school kids come to Washington to meet with me, I look forward to it. It's the best meetings that I have during the week, because they come into my office and they've seen the Lincoln Memorial and they've seen the Capitol and they've seen the White House, and there's a tendency among them to believe that all of that was just there. And I tell them a story about how it wasn't all just there, that 230 years ago, none of it was there. It was nothing but an idea. And the founding fathers, and they were fathers at that time, had no good example for what they were trying to set up, something they called a republic. We would call it a democracy, an exercise in self-government. They did two amazing things in their generation. One was liberating themselves through an armed insurrection from a colonial power that was England. And the other was writing a constitution that was actually ratified by the people who would live under that constitution. And that's why we call them founders. But they did something terrible as well. They perpetuated human slavery in their time. And it took other Americans, like Frederick Douglass, a person born a slave in Maryland, to end slavery. And when Douglass went up to Massachusetts, he was a fugitive slave who left his plantation in Maryland, made it to Massachusetts, where he found the abolitionist movement. And that movement was arguing that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document and we had to replace the Constitution of the United States. And Douglass, this former slave, said, "You have this backwards. You have this exactly wrong. The Constitution is an anti-slavery document. We're not living up to the words of the Constitution." And the power of that political argument changed American history. It's the same argument that Martin Luther King made the night before he was assassinated, when he went to stand with the unions in Memphis. And he said that he was just trying to make America stand up to the words that were written at the beginning of our founding. And that's what's at stake now. In my mind, Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King, because of what they did and what so many other Americans have done, deserve to be called founders as well, just like the people who wrote the Constitution of the United States. And when you think about what our responsibilities are as citizens, as voters, in a moment when we have a president who doesn't believe in democracy, who doesn't believe in the rule of law, who doesn't believe in this exercise in self-government, the independence of the judiciary, or the freedom of the press, we are called upon to be citizens of a republic, and that means everybody in this park is a founder. It is that elevated a responsibility that you have and that I have. And that's what this election is going to be about, and the election after that, and the election after that. And we have a lot of work to do to live up to the founding creed in our time. And we should be excited by it. We should see it as an opportunity, not a burden. King didn't see it as a burden. Frederick Douglass didn't see it as a burden. Those young people that stormed the cliffs in Normandy 75 years ago and had to think about what it was they faced across the body of water from England, they didn't think it was a burden. We can't think of this as a burden. This is an opportunity to do what we need to do on climate change, on immigration, on universal health care in this country, to make sure that we've got an economy that works for everybody. This is our opportunity to reform our government. We need a new progressive era in this country. We have to overturn Citizens United. We have to get rid of political gerrymandering in this country, as you've done in Iowa. We should ban members of Congress from ever becoming lobbyists after they've had the privilege of being in the Senate or being in the House. And I don't understand why they should have health care if they don't deliver universal health care to the American people. You'd be shocked at how quickly we would get it, I can assure you. And the final point I want to make is this, having been a school superintendent. When one group of students in this country has access to preschool and another through no fault of their own does not, when one group of students in this country has access to a school that a senator would send their kid to because their parents have $1.5 million to spend on a house in a district with good schools and the other does not, when one group of students had access to mentors and parents that went to college and college counselors and the money to go to school and the other does not, even equal is not equal. And that is why today in America, our education system, it pains me to say this, is reinforcing the income inequality that we have. We have to change that. We need to have preschool for every single kid in America who needs it, and that's every kid in America. We need to have a quality K-12 school that any senator would send their kid. That should be our standard in this country, and we're far from doing that. We should make sure that every kid that has access to college and goes graduates debt-free. And for the 70% of kids that don't go to college, we should be training them before they leave high school to be able to do a job that pays them a living wage, not the minimum wage. And if we do that, guess what? They'd have the chance to be a founder too. They'd have the chance to make a contribution to this democracy and to this economy. And while we're at it, maybe we should pay public school teachers like the professionals that they are. I'm standing out here for some sympathy with all of you. But I just want to finish by saying this. We are not going to get where we need to go with the same politics we've had the last 10 years. Donald Trump, as painful as it is to have him as president, he is a symptom of our problems. He's not the essential cause of our problems. We need to understand that, because it's not just about beating him again, which is the most important thing for us to do. It's also about coming together to govern this country again as friends, not as enemies, as founders of the United States of America, as a patriotic group of people who loves this country, who knows why it's so important for us to have the rule of law, to have freedom of the press, to have an independent judiciary, and to do our part to make this country more democratic, small d democratic, to make this country more democratic, more fair, and more free. And that is what I will do if you give me the chance to be the President of the United States. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be with you as well. Yay! I look forward to meeting everybody. My daughter Caroline is here with me today. I want to recognize her. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a candidate for president from Ohio.